Welcome to Strange But True. Take a breath, slow down, and listen carefully. Some stories are documented, some are debated, some refuse to be explained. We tell you the stories. You decide what's true. Now, let's begin our journey. In the 1930s, a small group of objects was uncovered near modern-day Baghdad during archaeological excavations. They were found among ordinary materials, clay vessels, fragments, debris consistent with domestic use. Nothing about the objects initially stood out, until they were examined more closely. Each vessel consisted of a clay jar. Inside was a rolled copper sheet. At the center was an iron rod. The components were sealed with bitumen. The objects were dated to the Parthian or early Sasanian period, roughly 2,000 years old. They were not decorative. They were not symbolic. They appeared functional, but no record explained their purpose. The objects did not resemble containers used for storage. They did not match known ritual vessels. They were not typical tools. Their internal construction was deliberate. Copper and iron were kept separated. The seal prevented leakage. The design was consistent across multiple examples. The objects were catalogued. They were placed in museum collections, and then they became difficult to classify. No ancient text mentions them. No instruction survives. No illustration depicts their use. They do not appear in inventories. They do not appear in administrative lists. The cultures that produced them recorded many aspects of daily life. Tools were named, processes were described, craft traditions were documented. These objects were not. Their existence is preserved physically. Their function is not preserved at all. Later examinations focused on structure. The materials were measured. The construction was documented. The seals were analyzed, but none of this explained intent. The objects do not appear to be experimental. They were made with consistency. That implies knowledge. It implies repetition. It implies that whoever made them understood their purpose. But that understanding did not survive into the record. The objects do not evolve. They do not show stages of development. They appear fully formed, and then they disappear. There is no later tradition that clearly continues their design. There's no earlier prototype that leads into them. They sit between eras, detached from narrative, detached from explanation. Modern interpretations attempt classification, but those interpretations do not appear in the ancient sources. They are attempts to explain silence. What remains constant is the absence. The objects were found, they were preserved, they were catalogued, but the reason they existed was not recorded. They occupy a gap in documentation, not because evidence was destroyed, but because it was never written down. The jars remain intact, the copper remains rolled, the iron remains centered, the seal remains unbroken, the design remains deliberate. Only the explanation is missing. History acknowledges their presence. It does not acknowledge their purpose. The record ends there. What complicates the record is not disagreement over the objects themselves. It is the absence of contextual explanation. The jars were not isolated curiosities. They were found among ordinary materials. That placement suggests they were not treated as special. They were not buried separately. They were not marked. They were not protected. This implies familiarity. Whoever handled them did not feel the need to explain them. That assumption is what failed to survive. No workshop has been identified. No production site has been confirmed. The objects do not appear alongside written instructions. They do not appear in teaching contexts. They exist without narrative. Later periods did not preserve their use. Later cultures did not adapt their design. Whatever role they played ended quietly. No transition is recorded. No replacement is described. The material remains. The knowledge does not. The jars do not resist study. They resist interpretation. They are complete objects, but incomplete records. History preserves their form. It does not preserve their meaning. History has a way of hiding the truth inside what it chooses not to explain. Inside tales, inside myths, inside legends, inside things that feel just a little off. If this story held your attention, subscribe to Strange But True, because sometimes what sounds unbelievable is exactly where the truth hides.